As much as I miss the idea of waiting another 2 years for a House of the Dragon episode every weekend, I'm glad that DC Studios came through right on time with Lanterns. Honestly speaking, I was pretty stoked about this show because the on-screen world has not done a lot of favors to the character of Green Lantern. I mean, yes, we have some banger animated work on the space cop, but the Ryan Reynolds live-action version of Hal Jordan just, well, didn't hit home. You know what I mean? Having said that, the Lanterns premiere was quite refreshing. Not only did it tread on a course through a few different timelines in order to build the history around Green Lantern's world building, but also ended the first episode itself with one major twist that none of us saw coming. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss what happened in the first episode of Lanterns, and let's try to predict what would be the fate of the latest bearer of the Power Ring. If the first episode of Lanterns has taught us anything, it certainly is the fact that being a Green Lantern is not easy as it looks. Hal Jordan in this show has been a hero and the protector of Earth since 1986, but the years have surely not been kind to Hal Jordan and have rather turned him into a cynic. It also does not help that now he's got a new trainee in hand and has to groom him to take over after him if that day comes. The show opens in the year 1996 with a shot of a small boy named John Stewart watching an interview of Hal Jordan on TV while his brother kept watch. This was the first time Hal had gone public with his Green Lantern identity after being on the job for almost a decade. He did not just reveal his identity to the world with a whole green costume shebang, but so gives us somewhat of a backstory. As it turns out, before being a superhero saving the planet from extraterrestrial threats, Hal was an Air Force test pilot who somehow ended up becoming the space cop responsible for protecting the entire sector of Earth's galaxy from any alien threat. But as he mentions in his interview, Hal is still very much a regular guy, but the only fact that set him apart from everyone else was his fearlessness, because Hal Jordan is not afraid of anything. Apparently, that was the only bar that Hal needed to pass in order to become Green Lantern, and because he lost his father to a plane crash, who was also a military pilot at a very young age, Hal had nothing to fear anymore. As the interview comes to an end, John immediately shuts it off when his father comes back home. By the looks of it, the man is also part of the military, and his 3 sons clearly are crap shit scared of it. After he comes home, John's father asks him to go outside and stand against the wall. What happens next is certainly difficult to watch, as he puts an apple on the boy's head and shoots the fruit off in one clean shot. However, before making the aim, John's father asks him if he was afraid, to which he responds, "No, sir." Weirdly enough, the scene ends with a man proudly smiling and hugging the boy after putting him in a position that could have just blown his head off. And by the bullet hole seen in the wall, you could say this type of abusive father-son bonding session was a daily occurrence. Anyway, Lanterns then flashes forward into 2016, and 2 decades later, we see how John Stewart is now a man. Not just that, he is living his dream, as now he is training to become the second Green Lantern. But that is only possible if Hal ever decides to train him seriously. Hal, who is now older, bitter, reckless, cynical, sarcastic, territorial, and just very intense, clearly does not take the job seriously. In the 2 months of training John, Hal has been MIA for 2 weeks, and now he has shown up all drunk and disheveled for their next lesson. John's patience is clearly wearing thin here, as he has not ever gotten the chance to wear the ring yet. Of course, Hal is pretty unbothered and asks the boy to not get hung up on jewelry before impulsively taking it off and putting it on the dashboard of his car. He simply asks the junior to meet him at a taco shop before tucking and rolling out of the vehicle while it is still running, thus allowing John and the ring to simply crash off a cliff. John somehow manages to get the ring on before the car crashes and survives, but oh god, is he pissed. I mean, honestly, who would not be? His childhood idol is now acting as a stubborn old deadbeat, but he eventually calms down after his father advises him to stay on the course. While he is walking to the taco shop, John gets puzzled when the ring shines to reveal a younger and less worn-down version of Hal appearing in front of him. As it turns out, 10 years ago in 2006, when Hal was still the only Green Lantern and comparatively friendly, he had backed up his consciousness as per the usual procedure for one last time. So it is basically a hologram of him that appeared to give a cryptic message that mentions a hail in Rushville, Nebraska. Once John arrives at the taco stop and gets his frustration out on Hal for almost getting him killed, he finally delivers the message that Hal's hologram self had left for him. This immediately shifts something in Hal as he drops all the goofy bit and flies away after asking John to pay the check. Unfortunately for John, this means he would have to fly to Rushville the normie way, and that is exactly what he does, with very visible frustration on his face. After reaching Rushville, he finds Hal at a high school football field, which has been closed off by the local cops as it is now a site for a mass murder. The local sheriff here is a woman named Carrie, who was already not happy that Green Lantern was on site, but John's arrival pushed her over the edge because they clearly have no jurisdiction over her territory. Carrie is also not buying into Hal's theory that the mass shooting having to do something with aliens, but years of experience has taught Hal to weed out aliens from the most unlikeliest crowds. Hal and John both single out a creepy-looking man who was just seen observing the scene, but John's inquiry with Carrie tips off the guy, and so he starts running for his life. After quite an intense chase, John tackles him down while Carrie drags him away. Sadly, when Hal asks for a chance to interrogate the man, Carrie straight up refuses, so our Green Lantern does the best he can by cooking up a situation that would land him close to his extraterrestrial suspect. We see Hal and John hang out at a bar in town and chat about the ring. After using it to conjure up some money to play a song on a jukebox, that too on repeat, Hal calls it a dangerous weapon. He then explains how he found the ring, apparently one night after his shift as a test pilot. Hal suddenly found himself in a green bubble and heard a voice that asked if he was afraid. Of course, Hal said he was not, and then the bubble flew him down to the exact same spot on Rushville, Nebraska, where an alien pilot had crashed its craft. The alien was badly injured, so during its final moments, the being put the ring on Hal, saying that it chose him. And with the alien dead, it was Hal who became the next space protector of Sector 2814. Ever since then, Hal has always felt that the crash was not a fluke, and on a related note, the hologram was actually designed as a sentinel. Following this revelation, Hal takes off his ring and gives it to John before going in to provoke the local hothead in a bar that ends up with him getting arrested. After he is taken away, a woman approaches John at the bar. He explains to her why there can only be a single lantern at a time, and that he is being trained to become the one if something ever happened to Hal. Of course, we all know that this encounter would end with John getting some action with a girl in her car. And we really think this is the end of it, but is it? Well, the next morning, John goes to the station to check on Hal, only to learn how horribly his plan had backfired. As it turns out, Carrie had locked him in a broom closet so as to prevent him from talking to the suspect in the same cell. There is also no bail for him, unless Hal goes through a trial, which also goes very badly, until a local lawyer steps up during the proceedings and offers to represent him. Of course, Hal hires Billy Macon on the spot, who also happens to be Carrie's husband. Billy does the job by getting Hal released and even pays his atrocious bail fee, but Green Lantern understands that nothing comes for free, so in exchange, the lawyer invites them to his father's ranch that night for dinner. Apparently, Billy's father is a huge Green Lantern fan and is just desperate to share a meal with a hero himself. We all know that nothing is that black and white, especially when it involves a super rich man owning guns in land. Once they enter, the vibes are immediately weird from that very moment as they see armed men guarding the road. It is Billy and Carrie who welcomed them before meeting the man of the hour, Will Macon. Carrie had already warned Hal against her father-in-law, but our Green Lantern fears nothing, right? As it turns out, Will is a rather self-assured man who is just a caretaker for the sprawling property he lives in. Sadly, he signed an NDA, so he cannot reveal the name of his employer to Hal, who naturally believes something more evil is at play. Even though Hal accuses Will of running a militia, the man simply raises his concerns about aliens coming to take over Earth. Apparently, Will is also convinced that the man in the holding cell is part of an alien advance team and was willing to clear the path just so that Hal could interrogate him. However, Will was awfully vague when Hal wondered what the man wanted in exchange. Meanwhile, John was busy showing Carrie and Billy's son Noah to throw a football before being absolutely shocked by his grandma, who just happens to be the woman he had hooked up with the previous night. After she introduces herself as Will's wife, Zoe Macon, she gives John a snarky look before leaving. Now, by the time the awkward night is over, Hal and Will agreed on their shared interest of protecting the planet from anybody not born on it. However, before they leave, Will makes a veiled comment to John that hints he knows what went on between him and Zoe. This basically proves that Will has eyes and ears everywhere on Rushville. Hal, on the other hand, is amazed that John managed to sleep with a local mafia's wife in just 24 hours of them being in town. On the next morning, Hal and John show up at the sheriff's station to interrogate the suspect. Even if Carrie makes her case about having the guy tested for any sort of alien anomaly in his DNA, John explains that there are 14 alien species that can pass for humans, even with tests. As the questioning begins, Hal quizzes the guy about football, which he absolutely nails, but then he asks where Harry Potter went to school, thus leading the man to absolutely fumble. Meanwhile, Carrie and John watch through the two-way mirror, where the sheriff infers that John does not respect Hal, but the junior lantern claims to respect Hal as he is fearless. It does not take long for Carrie to clock that Hal was just lonely, not fearless, as this is a man with nothing to lose. Unfortunately, this conversation is cut short when the suspect starts talking in hypotheticals that proves that is exactly what Hal had assumed. This is how the man finally claims that he might actually be an extraterrestrial sent to Earth on a mission that has nothing to do with peace. He even suggests that there could be a biometric explosive device hidden inside his skeleton, one that he can set off with a simple thought. And to make matters worse, he knows exactly how Hal's ring works, including the fact that it needs to be recharged using the Green Lantern battery, and judging by the timing, Hal's ring may not have much power left. Initially, Hal tries to keep things light, joking that they should probably decide whether they're going to talk or explode because it's almost lunchtime. But the situation quickly turns serious when the man tells him that deep down, Hal actually wants to die before mocking the Green Lantern oath. That finally pushes Hal over the edge as he slams the man against the wall, only for the alien to start beeping. Hal immediately realizes what's happening, and so with barely enough time to react, he throws the man into a corner and creates a protective green bubble around him just before the explosion goes off. The blast absolutely tears through the building, sending debris flying and shaking everything around him. Somehow, Hal rises from the bubble and happily points out that he had been right all along, as the man really was an alien. You would think that's the end of it, but the story then jumps forward to 2026. John is now sporting a goatee while driving through a snowy night before passing the remains of what looks like some long-abandoned ruins. He eventually pulls up beside Carrie's car and draws her in for a hug, which is surely weird. The two have not seen each other in years, but Carrie tells him how he barely seems to have aged. However, the reunion quickly takes a dark turn when they return back to the same football field and find Hal Jordan sitting alone in the bleachers in the cold. The main shocker arrives when we learn that Hal is actually dead, as specified by the bullet wound on his forehead. More so, John lifts his finger to realize that Hal was not wearing the power ring. The episode ends in a mystery as the Green Lantern ring is nowhere to be found. I honestly have so many questions from the show, but before that, did they actually believe killing off Hal Jordan could have been a good idea for the show? I really don't know much about that because Lanterns will clearly be jumping through different timelines a lot, but we deserve to see how Hal becomes the mentor that John needs him to be. Maybe it is John's time to shine, but that simply cannot be done without John's overarching influence, right? More importantly, the 2026 timeline is barely explored in Lantern's first episode, so we still have very little idea about what actually happened to Hal Jordan. His death will almost certainly become one of the show's biggest mysteries as the story moves forward, but I hope they do not reduce the show to a whole ring-finding quest for John, as that would be just too damn predictable for the plot. But who do you think killed Hal? Well, someone could have killed Hal and taken the ring from him, or perhaps Hal simply was not wearing it when he was attacked, which left him completely defenseless. The first possibility becomes especially interesting when you consider Sinestro, as the trailers have already revealed that Ulrich Thompson's version of the character is imprisoned in the present-day storyline. Given Sinestro's complicated history with Hal and the possibility that he may still resent his former mentor, it is not hard to imagine him wanting Hal's ring for himself. Of course, Sinestro is not the only suspect, as the 2016 storyline establishes that Hal has already started uncovering an alien conspiracy in Rushville. The alien who ultimately blows himself up claims that he came to Earth seeking vengeance and hoping to ignite a war. So whatever Hal uncovers over the next 10 years could easily put him on the wrong side of another extraterrestrial threat before eventually leading to his murder. Also, one fun detail about the 2026 timeline is very hard to miss, and that is Jon Stewart sporting the Green Lantern's famous goatee. That look is most famously associated with Justice League Unlimited and several other versions of the character. It may just be a character design choice, but for us longtime DC fans, it surely is a nice little nod. Having said that, Hal is also tied directly to the larger mystery because his connection to the Green Lantern Corps began in Nebraska, where he first encountered Abin Sur and became a Green Lantern. We also cannot ignore William Macon, who is quickly emerging an important character in Rushville. He is wealthy, well-connected, and clearly has some influence over what happens in the town. But there is also a sense that Macon is not working entirely on his own, as he appears to be taking orders from someone whose identity is still being kept secret. In case you did not know, even before Lantern's premiere, that mysterious setup led to plenty of speculation about who Macon might really be. The most popular theory was that he could secretly be playing Black Hand. In the comics, Black Hand's real name is William Hand, so the shared first name with a character immediately caught everyone's attention. Black Hand is actually one of the Green Lantern's most dangerous enemies and the leader of the Black Lantern Corps. He also plays a major role in Blackest Night, which is one of DC's biggest Green Lantern storylines and is famously involved with the dead being brought back to life. With Hal now dead in the 2026 timeline, William Macon is definitely someone worth keeping an eye on. It also does not matter whether the Black Hand theory turns out to be true or not, as the show has clearly positioned him as a potentially important piece of the mystery. Well, that's just my 2 cents. What do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comment box down below. As always, don't forget to subscribe. A subscription is the best way to be informed of all things Green Lantern. This is the V of Marvelous Videos. I'll be seeing you in the next video.